in this video we're going to take a look at how SAS handles dates. So and more specifically how to import dates into SAS. So I've got this data set here, which is a whole bunch of birthdays, and if you look carefully at this, we see that the first 20 rows of our data set, there's room for confusion. The first number here and the second number there are all less than 12, so it's not necessarily immediate as to whether or not that is the day and that is the month, or that is the month and that is the day. So let's see how SAS handles importing that. So if we were to import this normally, we'd do proc import data file equals point towards the data file, which happens to be in my home directory, which is given by the tilde. Where am I putting it? I'm putting it in a data set, a SAS data set called birthdays in the work library. I want to replace the data set if it's already there, and I want to get the names from the first row, and I want to run that. So run that. That all goes in, and if we look at the data set, we see that there's a bit of a problem there, and in fact if we look carefully it actually says the import was unsuccessful on the log. And if we go up here, we see indeed something's happening on Vince and Zoe. Now what's in fact happening here is by default proc import looks at the first 20 rows of any data set and makes assumptions as to the format of this. Now it's looked at this and it's assumed that this particular variable here is of the format month first, date second, and obviously when it's gotten to Vince and Zoe it's had a problem. So an immediate fix to this is to simply include another bit of code which tells it how many rows to use to guess. So I'm going to put 25. More rows than I've got, but it's okay. And so if we do this now and submit, first of all, no problems, and look here, and again we see no problems. So this is a quick fix. Use proc import and set guessing rows to be quite high. I think it takes quite a lot to actually slow down the code because it just takes a quick glance. If we now do proc contents on this data set, data equals birthdays, and run. If we run that, proc contents, you'll recall, is just a way of quickly looking at the data set. We see various things. So first of all, this in format is what's important. That's the format that was used to on the way in, as the data was going in to SAS. So in other words, when it guessed, when it looked at all the rows, looked at all 25 rows, it realized that the format of the data was date, YY, and 10. 10 dot simply says that the width of the variable was 10. That's because we had two variables for the date, two variables for the month, two digits for the date, 2 digits for the month, 4 digits for the year, and so that's 8, as well as the 2 slashes in between the date and the month. Alright? So, and then what we have is this format, and that format is simply how to display the data, but we'll understand that now, because there's another way to import a data file, and that's by using a data step, creating the data file birthdays, and using the in file statement. So that's saying, go in the file, birthdays, oops, should be a colon there, .csv. You tell it what the delimiter is. So the delimiter is a comma. This is our particular file, and you say where the first observation is. So our first row of our data set was the names of the variables. So the data set, the actual data only starts on the second row. And then use the input statement. Now this is similar to when directly inputting data into SAS. Use the input statement. The first variable we're going to call it name, happens to be a string variable, and the second variable we're going to call birthday, and we tell it what format it is in. So date, month, year, 10 dot. So this is us telling SAS what format it's in, and then a run statement. Look at all that, all looks fine. So if we run this, everything's there. If we look here, something interesting has happened. it's imported the data, but it's imported it all as numbers. In other words, it's ripped off this format and it saved dates as SAS saves dates. And this is the interesting part. SAS saves dates as numbers using the convention that 0 happens to be the 1st of January 1960. I have no idea why that's the choice, but so numbers that are negative are numbers that were before 1960, and numbers that were positive, numbers that were after 1960. And it counts in date. This is actually extremely useful, extremely powerful, because it allows for very easy manipulation of data, of dates. So if we rerun this proc contents, we see now that the birthday is just any old numeric character of a particular length. Okay. Now it might be necessary to actually make this to format the data in such a way, to present it in such a way, and you do that simply with this command. So we format birthday, and now we could use date, month, year, 10 dot, and that would just format it the same way, but we're going to use a different format, date 9 dot, and a run statement. So now if I run that, what's happened here is it's put it in the date 9 format. Now this is just the appearance. Underneath all this, there's still just the numbers. Okay? We'll just rerun the proc contents. So we see that this is how it's formatted. It's still numeric format, a numeric variable, but it's just formatted with date 9. Alright? So that's the underlying variable. The underlying data is still the same. So that's more or less how to handle dates in SAS, because then obviously you can do whatever you want to them just using basic arithmetic. And for a full list of the formats, and formats don't just apply to dates, they also apply to character and string variables, just look online. There are lots of formats online.